Hello, it's me again. I feel like I should be greeting you from outer space with as many outer space cards as I've created in the last couple of weeks, but I'm having such fun with the new Trinity Stamps release. Anyway, this card today is another one of their stamp sets. It's called Another Orbit. And I also decided I would try out their new emergency card die set number 3 double slider interactive card. And boy, do I love this die set. It is so easy. You can give me a thumbs up if you like this video. You could also subscribe to be notified of future videos. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill or on my blog, www.sandykogdilldesigns. Let's get started. Starting on the background of this card, I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock and I'm going to start ink blending it using Salty Ocean, Prize Ribbon, and Chipped Sapphire Distress Oxide ink. I love doing blended ink backgrounds. It's probably one of my favorite things to do in card making. So I'm just basically going to lay down those colors and blend them in so that there's a nice gradation, is that the right word? I don't know, of color between the lighter into the darker. Because I'm going to be having 2 tabs pop out of this card, I had enough of my ink blending on the top of my card that I just did, so I need to create another piece of ink blended cardstock for the bottom piece that pops out. So I'm just going to use my Salty Ocean, just lay in some of that color, and then I'll use the die to cut it out. On this background, I knew that I wanted to hot foil some stars in the background, but I also wanted to add just a little bit more to it. So I'm using the star cluster stamp from Out of This World, and I'm just going to heat emboss it on my background using silver embossing powder. To get my background ready for foiling, I am going to have to cover up what I just heat embossed on there, or else my foil star plate is going to put stars on top of them and it's just going to look awfully messy. So what I've done is I've just used the die from that set, cut out a piece of scrap cardboard, and I will just temporarily tape it to my background, covering up that area. I have heat foiled my background and my 2 little tabs that pop out. I'm using Spellbinder's Sky Bright Glimmer hot foil. I didn't want silver. I was hoping it was going to be a lot different of a color than the silver ones that I had embossed, but it still looks okay. Unfortunately, you cannot foil the little pull tabs and your background at the same time. So that actually was foiled on 2 different passes. Now that I have my background foiled, we're going to start putting together the interactive mechanism. I'm going to use the largest notch from the emergency card die set to cut out a little notch opening at the top of the card. That is going to help my card recipient grasp onto the mechanism that's going to make the whole card come alive. As you can see, I am using a fun new little tool that I just got from Pear Blossom Press. It does a lot of things, but I'm using it right now to help me line up the center of my card so that I can place my die in just the right spot so it's not off one way or the other. I tend to get lazy and try to eyeball things, but this is very, very helpful. So I'm going to glue down that die, and I'm going to run it through my die cutter. We're going to start assembling the actual mechanism that makes those two pieces pop up from the top and the bottom of the card. I'm going to take the H piece that I've cut out from my die set. I am using the larger one. I'm going to put some double-sided adhesive tape. I'm using some really sticky stuff because I want it to hold on one side of a piece of, it's an acetate, but it's more like a plastic, and I'm just using plastic that I'm just kind of scrapping from actually the packaging that comes with my die sets and stamps. So I'm going to cut that piece just a smidgen under 2¼ inches, and I'm not too worried about the length. I just want the width to make sure that it's not rubbing on those two little arms that stick out, or the four little arms that stick out. I'm going to peel off that tape and bring the other end around on top. It's just going to make like a little loop around my H. I'll just go ahead and trim off that excess tape right there. I want to make sure that my plastic is moving around that piece fairly freely. Then I'm going to take the same type of double-sided tape, and I'm going to put a small piece at the top where I initially taped the two pieces together, trim that, and adhere it there. Then I'm going to flip that piece over, and on the bottom of the H, I'm going to put another piece of the adhesive tape. Just make sure when you're cutting your tape that you're not overextending it. You don't want any of that tape exceeding past the edges of the plastic, or it's just going to stop that mechanism from moving, if that makes any sense at all. I want to put some double-sided foam tape on those little arms of the H piece. I'm using foam tape that I got from Hobby Lobby, and it's 2 millimeters thick, so it's a little bit more than what I needed, but it's what I had. It's also a smidgen wider than the little H pieces, so I'm being very, very careful to not catch any of that plastic, because again, that's not going to slide when you need it to slide. So I'm going to put that on both of the back side, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You're going to need that height for that mechanism to slide back and forth. Okay, this might get a little confusing. With both of those pieces that pop up, I work with them both with the right sides facing up. So the one that's going to pull up at the top is actually going to be adhered at the bottom of that mechanism. Then you're going to flip it over and place the piece that pops out of the bottom at the top of the H piece. It seems like it's backwards, but that's just the way it works. So once you get those pieces, I always kind of play with them to make sure that they're moving freely before I get that attached to my card. I'm going to peel off the protective tape on the front of it's the front of the little mechanism, and then I'm going to line up the bottom with the bottom of the card and center it. Everything works much better if you center it, and I probably should have pulled out my new little tool, but heaven only knows it was probably buried under a pile of paper at this point. Since we've used 2 layers of the foam tape, one on the front and one on the back of that moving mechanism, the little piece that's the H, we're going to have to build up the rest of the card front to that same height. So what I'm doing here is I'm doing actually 2 layers of foam tape on both sides of that mechanism to build it up where I need it. Again, I'm being very, very careful not to hinder that mechanism at all so that it moves freely when that tab is pulled. I always like to have a border around the outside of my cards. So this front piece, the one that's inked and foiled, has been cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4. My yellow piece of cardstock is the standard A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to peel off the protective tape and I'm going to adhere that to my yellow cardstock. I've actually used 2 different stamp sets for my little elements for this card. I'm using the stamp set Another Orbit and Out of This World for my little images. I've used Copic markers to color everything. And the colors that I've used are, for the flag, B0000, B00, and B01. For the Earth-looking planet, I've got B00, B02, B04. For the other planet and the astronaut, I've got B02, B04, and B05. My yellows are Y02, Y06, and Y19. My oranges are Y35, YR07, YR09. My purple is V04, V15, and V17. And the grays that I used are N2, N3, and N6. I used the sentiment from Another Orbit stamp set for this particular card. I heat embossed it on yellow cardstock using black embossing powder. And then I used the coordinating die to cut out the sentiment. I like how Trinity Stamp always or usually has that little bubble die to cut out the sentiments. I just think it gives it such a nice, clean, finished look. Even though there is a little stamp that fits perfectly in that flag, I just wanted to put a silver star in the center of mine. So I had some silver stars that I had cut out from silver glitter paper, and I'll just use some of those to kind of sprinkle around my card after I get my little planets adhered. I love the way the one little astronaut is up at the top tab that pops out. I just think he fit just perfectly for this card. I realized after the fact that I needed to put something at the top of that card to kind of instruct the recipient as to what to do with it. So I used that die that came with the set, cut out another little semicircle out of the yellow cardstock, and then stamped the word pull on top of it. Then I glued it to the top of that tab. And that pretty much does it for this card. I kind of modified the front of the card by cutting it down to a 4 by 5 1/4. So I think if I were to do this again, I would actually also cut a notch at the top of the outer piece, just because it felt like it wasn't, or it was a little difficult to grasp that little pull tab. Anyway, I am absolutely thrilled with this card. I think it was one of the more, one of the easier interactive dies that I've used. I will definitely be using it again. In fact, I just finished another card that I'll be making a video of and posting in the next few days. If you enjoyed this card, give me a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to this channel and be notified of new videos. You can follow me on Instagram at Sandy Cogdill or on my blog, www.sandycogdilldesigns.com. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and I hope you have a great one. Bye-bye.